Our game is in serious trouble, and it all boils down to one simple problem: dirt. A while ago, we talked about how our game originally started as a hardcore survival game, but we decided to pivot to another type of game entirely by deleting all of the combat. And thus, Animalkind was born. We faced many challenges and continue to do so from making the decision, but one of the biggest ones facing us at the moment has to do with dirt, or more strictly, voxels. This is a voxel. Impressive, right? No? You're not impressed? Well, that's fair. One voxel on its own can't actually do a lot, save maybe draw a sphere or a box. A voxel is a lot like a human. To reach its maximum potential, it requires an entire society, a culture, a network to support it. This is that family, a field of voxels as far as the eye can see. Thousands, millions of similar little dust specks, insignificant on their own. But together, you can create an entire universe. The possibilities are infinite, but in order to understand why, and in order to understand why they are both our greatest gift and our greatest curse as a game studio, you need to understand how they work. Let's get to it. Let's go back to our single voxel here. What exactly is it? It might help us to understand where the word voxel even comes from. It's a portmanteau, short for volumetric pixel. It is quite literally a three-dimensional pixel. It exists not just in a two-dimensional space like the pixels on your screen, but in three-dimensional space. What does it do? It holds data. That's it. That's its sole job. But what data? That's the key. And what data it holds is ultimately up to you. The first game to ever use voxel graphics was actually all the way back in 1992, Comanche Maximum Overkill. But the simplest version of a voxel-based game to look at to understand the very basics of how they work is actually Minecraft. Minecraft's voxel system is actually tremendously complex compared to several others, including our own, which we will explain later, but it's very easy to understand even at a glance. Each block, that's a voxel, a discrete position in 3D space. Each Minecraft world is a voxel field where each voxel is separated by 1 meter. Each voxel stores what type of block is there, if any, its block state, orientation, lighting, and any other relevant information you can think of. That said, considering that each world, ignoring the nether and end, stretches 59.9 million blocks in each direction and has a build range of 584 blocks up and down, this makes the total number of voxels in the overworld amount to something like 1.38 quintillion voxels. If each one took up only one bit of information, each Minecraft world would take up over 172 petabytes of storage space. So it can't just build each world from scratch when you start a new game, because each world would require a mid-tier data center to store all of its information, which is where one of the hidden strengths of voxels comes from: procedurality. Procedurality is when you follow a recipe step by step based on the rules handed to you. You, in this case, are a computer. An example of this would be if I said, hey, we have a Discord server that you can get to by going to discord.gg/Animalkind or clicking the link in the description. You wouldn't have to go through all the trouble of writing your own code for a communication platform or even make your own server if you wanted to hang out with us and follow our game dev journey. You could just follow the rules and click the link to head on over to our server that we already made. Because a Minecraft world isn't built from one giant 3D mesh, but rather from discrete little pieces, they can actually build their worlds using math, which means it only needs to store the data that it needs access to. It does this through a number of clever techniques. The first one is using something called chunks. A chunk is a 16 by 16 chunk of a Minecraft world, going from top to bottom. Minecraft loads some number of these at game launch and always keeps some loaded up around the player so you can seamlessly run from one area to the other without really noticing for the most part. It generates the terrain of these chunks based on a complexly layered network of math functions, mostly noise, and only generates them when they're actually visited. Then they're committed to a region file so they can be quickly accessed again later. Minecraft actually serializes and saves each individual block in its save data, which is why save files can begin to balloon in size over particularly large save files. But there's a pretty cool power here that allows you to play the same save file follow along with different updates even if the noise weights are adjusted. This chunkification is the first major way that Minecraft gets to have its cake and eat it too. A single Minecraft save file is functionally infinite but takes up barely any space at launch, and it's all possible thanks to voxels. But that's just the beginning, and it also starts to strike at the heart of why we are in a bit of a pickle with our own game, but more on that later. Chunks and math are the ultimate power of voxel terrain, and it's how we optimize our own terrain generation as well, but you'd be grossly mistaken in thinking that just because voxels are arranged in a 3D grid that the terrain that they generate has to resemble a grid itself, which is where the power of voxels really starts to shine. If you could figure out a way to wield the strength of math and chunkification but make your terrain as smooth and granular as you want, you could create real worlds, not Lego worlds. You could make an entire reality, a universe all of your own just by wielding voxel technology, which is precisely what Hello Games did when they made No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky had a bit of a rocky launch, but it has become something of a success story on the powers of perseverance and dedication over the years, and still has managed to make their game one of the best space exploration games of all time in the process. But the tech that was exceptional, that was truly brilliant and outstanding, was a part of their game from the very beginning, and it was completely invisible to the average person, and it all goes back to voxels. Hello Games faced a wide number of design challenges in trying to make fully editable planets with natural looking terrain. Like Minecraft, they generate their worlds with math and layered noise functions, but unlike Minecraft, their worlds are smooth and layered with naturalistic hills and mountains and valleys, but more crucially, they're round. Spheres. How can you make something round in a cubed space? Very carefully. They actually map all of their terrain onto a cube first and then transform it into a map for their sphere using spherical projection algorithms. This helps reduce noticeable seams. Then, like Minecraft, they break the loading space into chunks and only load information for areas you're actively in. You can sometimes see this if you load in a random chunk and it's not quite properly aligned, like here. This is a diamond shape because of this spherical projection. The closer you are to a border, what would be the edge of your sphere, the more stretched your chunk gets so it can fit its data into the correct space. That's not totally important though. Like Minecraft, No Man's Sky breaks their game into 16 by 16 chunks but overlaps them by one voxel so that when they generate the terrain, they can be smoothly blended without issue. Then they subdivide this terrain using tessellation and apply displacements to that terrain, making it seem even more realistic and rocky. Pretty outstanding. Also, fun random fact, but each voxel corresponds to one of the in-game units in No Man's Sky exactly. So that's why nobody can really precisely figure out what a unit is. It's just the voxel field density of the game. So if Minecraft voxels have a ton of data per voxel, it must take even more to make smooth terrain like this, right? Well, what if I told you that the answer to that question actually was no, and all of this beautiful complexity not only took up less space than Minecraft's voxel storage system, but is actually stored in one simple value. More on that in a bit. First, let's talk about how No Man's Sky invented a genius way of making their games perfectly editable, not just in single player, but also in multiplayer, while still keeping their save games super manageable. The first is that No Man's Sky has an edit limit. You can actually only have up to 15,000 edits to the terrain per save file, period, end of story. This doesn't sound like a lot, but the way they handle it is absolutely brilliant. Firstly, if you have a dedicated base, its edits are considered protected and never change, but changes in the rest of the world are not protected. When you reach your 15,000 edits, your oldest edits are deleted as the new ones are allowed to impact the terrain. This is why you can dig essentially forever and never really experience anything stopping you, and they do this without having to save the terrain data for you every single chunk you visit. Once they get to a certain size, save files tend to not get much bigger. How is that possible? Well, the secret lies in the way that they coded edits. When you load into an area in No Man's Sky, it generates the terrain around you according to the noise rules determined before, just like Minecraft, but it does this at runtime. It never stores any of it, save for the specific algorithms used to generate a given planet in case the global generation settings are changed later, so your planet you discovered ages ago will hopefully remain the same even after updates. But after the world loads in, it then applies your edits over top it. So they're only ever saving the edits, but 15,000 voxels to edit doesn't actually seem like a lot. That's pretty small. That's this size. And that's because No Man's Sky is extra brilliant. They don't ever save voxel data, they save edits. The max size mining tool, which can remove about 72 voxels per use if you get it just right, yeah, each shot is one edit. That means 15,000 edits doesn't net you 15,000 individual voxel changes. It can allow you to edit up to 1.1 million voxels if you're clever enough. I was able to remove this much terrain using my edit limit. That's amazing. This also means that edits are very easy to send from one computer to another because they are literally just one number. Seriously, it's this voxel had 92 applied to it. Then it just runs the rules on the terrain each time it's loaded. That's extremely fast and small. We actually do something similar to this in our game Animalkind, though we're still kind of fine-tuning how the tools work. We only save what computer engineers call deltas. Deltas is something that they stole from physics, and it just means change. So we generate our terrain when the world loads and only send changes to the server when someone makes them. Then when the world unloads, we bake it all in so we don't have to constantly rerun change data, which is way better for our use case. Astroneer also runs their voxel system in a similar way to No Man's Sky. God, just look at that editing. It's buttery smooth. Astroneer has no edit limit other than file sizes making the game crash, which I guess is the difference that 10 or so years makes. But how is the same technology that pilots Minecraft, a very blocky world, become this smooth when each voxel is still pretty far apart? And somehow it takes up less data? In fact, it's not just that, but it's just one single number? That's it? How on earth does that work? Well, it ties all the way back to what I said earlier. The real power of a voxel isn't what it can do on its own, but is what they can accomplish together. And in a world of thousands of voxels, all you need to create the most beautiful world in the universe is a single number. All thanks to the magic of signed distance fields. One number. What does this number mean, though? It's simple. It means how far am I from the nearest surface. Voxels very far from the surface above the ground have a positive number, and voxels very far from the surface below the ground have a negative value. In the biz, this is referred to as a scalar value. It's a signed distance field because it is designated as a positive or negative, that's the signed part, the distance, which is the number itself, and the field, which in this case is the field of voxels. This alone isn't interesting. One voxel knowing it's 1 unit away from a surface only knows that within an entire sphere of one around it that there is a surface. But add in another voxel and another and another, and suddenly they can run three-dimensional math on each other, and when the numbers go from positive to negative, we know that there is a vertex and therefore ground. Make thousands of these things and suddenly you can make almost anything that you want. Suddenly, each voxel isn't a blob or square of dirt, it's a complex slope that smoothly feeds from one to another with as much fine-tuned precision as you want. More voxels close together isn't always what you want because that doesn't always equate to more resolution, but too few and you really do lose out on the ability to make complex shapes, and all of it comes from math like this. Working with voxels is a balancing act trying to find what works for you, getting the correct ratio of voxel precision and granularity and control while making your game as fun as possible and making sure that the voxels work with you, not against you. No Man's Sky, Astroneer, Minecraft, and even a game about digging a hole all have done a wonderful job optimizing their digging experience through technology and innovation. And I didn't even talk about Octree optimization yet, which I guess is irrelevant because looking at all these games and the wonderful job they did making their voxel systems work fantastically does not actually solve our problem, because our problem isn't a technical one, it's existential. When we built our voxel system, we had a different game entirely, a game where you'd mine the earth for iron and ore to smelt weapons to take down Fightbear. It was a world not unlike No Man's Sky and Astroneer, one of stress and survival, a world where tearing it asunder to strip it for parts so you could nuke the boss or create an everlasting hoard of food was not only justified, it was rewarded. But we find ourselves in a new place now, a world of collaboration and building, one where we want to sculpt the world to be more majestic and to synchronize with our other mechanics. Now it's a place where our single value voxel doesn't represent the infinite possibilities of being able to create things that can be destroyed, but rather the burden of trying to find a way to make this single value, this 3D pixel, work for us, for our game. While exploring this topic for our shorts weeks ago, our studio head Steven asked me, how important do you think making our voxel customization as smooth as Astroneer's is? And my immediate response was, well, I think it's pretty important. But is it though? The question haunted me as I thought about this more and more and more I thought about it, the more I felt the answer was no. Astroneer's voxel system works so well for them because it's a game about tearing the world apart to get to the center of it so you can move on to the next place. But our game? It's quite literally the opposite. You're meant to build a home for yourself and for others. We want you to want to stay there. So a voxel system like Astroneer's, No Man's Skies, even Minecraft's doesn't really work for us. We need to do something different. We can make our system do what Astroneer's does, but should we? A voxel represents infinite possibilities, and before us stands not one, not two, not three, but unlimited forks in the road to take. And we have to choose one. Somewhere in that infinite marble of possibilities is Animalkind's answer to what you can do with voxels, how we can make them ours, to use them to create and beautify and inspire and transcend. Is it a seed we plant that grows into an island of organic shapes? Is it a statue that you can carve yourself and share with others? Is it something else entirely? Who knows? We're standing on the shoulders of giants who came before us. We can see in so many different directions. What do you think? What would you do in our shoes? Is our voxel system a darling that we should kill, or is there a secret answer out there we have yet to discover, lurking beneath the layers of earth, stone, and fire? If you want to tell us your thoughts, we'd love to see them. We are Uncommon Games, game devs who like to celebrate other devs and show you just how cool even the simplest games you've played are. We read every comment, but we're also looking for more folk to join our Discord server, which you can find by heading over to discord.gg/animalkind or tapping the link down there. I'll see you next time to talk about something else. It's a secret though. You'll have to see. Subscribe.